Speaking of Morgan, we have Morgan from Podcast of the Dragon back with us today for Chapter 19. Very excited about that.
Yeah, Morgan picked this chapter and even had us adjust our time. But we did it because we, as everyone who listens to this podcast knows, absolutely love Morgan and her podcast, Podcast of the Dragon. And so we're very, very excited to have her here with us today to do a heavy politics culmination Egwene arc chapter.
Hi.
So welcome. Hi. How are you today in the parasocial podcasty sense?
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah. Well, parasocial podcasty sense. I don't know. It's Tuesday and I'm don't feel very intelligent. So if nobody had ever heard my podcast before, they might think that, I was a little bit dumb. But yeah, I'm doing great. It's good to be back. I haven't been here since we did I don't know, chapter 13 or something, or it has been a while.
It's been a long time. A long time since the savor. The savor of Morgan's intelligence.
Yeah, there's too much.
Yeah, but which you guys said a whole bunch of really nice stuff about last episode, and as I was saying before you turned the recording on, I was cleaning my kitchen and then listening to your last episode, and you started talking about me, and I was pulling my flannel over my face and being like, "You're embarrassing me." So.
Well, I meant every word.
I was editing that just thinking of how hard it was going to be for you to hear, and I was like, "I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna. It has to go in. I can't take it out."
Well, at least I was only listening to it by myself. I can't imagine listening to it in a room.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I guess other news, I'm probably going to be starting a new job, barring any unforeseen circumstances, on the 28th of this month.
Yay, start date.
What does that mean for you guys? Probably not much. We will be sticking to the 1 episode a week schedule. There is going to be zero chance of me going back to 2 episodes a week. But otherwise, it shouldn't disrupt anything.
No, it's going to change the proportion of how your Patreon money is apportioned between us. Yes. Because one of us will have a full-time job and one of us will not.
And Ray is going to take on, has taken on more of the editing work in the recent few days, or recent few months.
I do all the editing now, gang. So if you have an issue with the editing, it's me. Or if you like the editing more, it's me.
Realistically, yeah.
I mean, I can get a little self-censorious at times. I know you suffered from this too. You're way more critical of yourself than of me.
I did, yeah. It's interesting to hear myself say much more on the podcast. Then when I go back and listen, I'm like, I would have cut myself saying that many, many times. Whereas Aradia cuts out stuff. I'm like, oh, why did she cut that out? That was a perfectly good argument. She should have kept that. So it doesn't matter who's editing. You're going to cut yourself more than the other person. It's just the self-consciousness of editing. So today we are here to talk about Chapter 19, The Law. I fought the law and the law won. And our symbol is the mouse ears, Mickey Mouse ears, the snake in the wheel.
The snake in the wheel, because it's just the fate of the whole damn world turning on the deliberations of Aes Sedai. It's just the pattern. Will pattern as the pattern patterns.
For once, the wheel's not centered on Tarvalin, it's centered on Egwene here. The real hall.
Deep.
Yeah. Egwene is bringing together the people who pull the strings of nations. It's not bringing together nations, but it's basically the same thing because it's the people who pull the strings of nations. It's really important, dragon level stuff.
And Aradia, do you want to read this in?
Yeah, I only really thought that the first paragraph merited actually being read. Seems like a short read.
The only thing I had about the second paragraph is he names a lot of horses in the second paragraph, which is not something we often get. It's like horse name salad.
So should I read horse name salad? Or
at this point, yes. Yeah. After saying that, yeah.
I think at that point it's name alfalfa.
All right.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Getting the sitters to their mounts proved no bother. They were as eager to be away as Egwene, especially Ramonda and Lelaine, both cold as the wind and with eyes like thunderclouds. The rest were the very image of cool-eyed Aes Sedai serenity, giving off composure like a heavy scent. Yet they glided to their horses so quickly that the nobles were left gaping and the brightly clad servants scrambling and loading the pack horses to catch up as best they could. Egwene had Daishar set a hard pace in the snow, and with no more than a look and a nod from her, Lord Bryn made sure the armored escorts moved as fast. Swan on Bella and Shiriam on Wing rushed to join her. For long stretches they churned through fetlock-deep cover, the horses stepping high at near to a trot, the flame of Tarvalin rippling in the icy breeze, and even when it was necessary to slow, when the horses were sinking in knee-deep through the snow crust, they kept to a fast walk. Horsey, horsey, horsey.
It's not the most riveting chapter intro, but it's kind of like they're basically just going straight from the last chapter ending into this one, which, you know, he does that a lot, it seems like, once we get into the later books.
Especially with this part of Egwene's arc. There's just, the chapter breaks take zero time in between at all for this whole, like, section of chapters.
I would say that almost defines the slog, is instead of each chapter jumping to a new character in a new place, it's like we have 5 chapters that's one scene. And so we don't make a lot of forward progress in 100 pages. And so that's what happens. People are like, well, nothing's happening. And it's like, well, it is. It's just, we're really only getting like Egwene and Rand in like 2 scenes. The vast majority of this book is like Rand in doing his thing and Egwene doing her thing, and it all happens in like one day for both of them, 1 or 2 days.
Actually, 25% of the POVs in this book is Elaine.
Seriously?
Uh-huh.
Wow. Yeah, but because it's her arc gets started. We get the nobles introduced, right, as this nothing thing for Egwene, and then Elaine's arc starts. And where they matter so much. So I hadn't realized how close those things were until I realized the next chapter is Elaine, like, on her way. And it's like, oh, right. Like, there's a lot of book left. And but 25%? I didn't realize it was 25%.
I didn't think either.
But I guess that's because Bowl of the Winds and her arc getting off the ground. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why Elaine is the 5th highest POV percentage character after Rand, Matt, Perrin, and Egwene. I think it's because she gets so much in this book in particular, and then a bit going forward with the rest of her Succession arc, because she gets even more than Nynaeve as far as POVs.
Wow.
And especially in the later books with the Sanderson, when I think she gets a lot there.
Yeah, I think she gets a decent bit. I mean, he tries to like run around and cover everybody, but
he clearly liked Elaine more than Nynaeve.
Yes. Nynaeve is Nynaeve in the Sanderson books feels like a non-entity to me. She feels like a Rand accessory, which is really unfortunate to me. Whereas I feel like Elaine is very much, you know, she does her whole succession war. She's got her interaction with Brigida. Like, she leads the war effort. Like, it's. I think Sanderson wrote Elaine much better than he wrote Nynaeve.
Maybe he tried to make Elaine actually grow and stop being stupid, since RJ got her stuck in this, like, I'm pregnant and I lost my brain phase, which has always irritated me. Because apparently some women say pregnancy brain is a thing, but I feel like, I mean, I'm hoping he asked a woman before he wrote her, but even so, it's just kind of like, I hate it a little.
I had a boss who was pregnant and definitely had pregnancy brain, and it was a thing. Like, there were, like, she went from someone with a sharp as tack memory, I could tell her anything and she would remember it, to just being completely forgetful. And she was like, I don't know what's going on with my brain. I mean, she knew it was the pregnancy, but like, it does happen to some people. There is a hormone effect. As a man, I can state that. Well, let me put it this way. As someone who's been pregnant just as much as you two.
That is fair.
Touche. Okay. Well, yeah, so they're riding back, and she's, like, immediately telling Swan at the end of the last chapter, let's get them together because they have to get back to camp before sundown, because I guess you have to get back before sundown if you want to call the hall.
I think it's because otherwise, if they get back too late, it'll be like, well, clearly we're all going to bed.
And she doesn't want to give them a chance to think.
Yeah.
Right? She's trying to avalanche them into the declaration of war.
And they're all going to argue for bed if they get back well after sunset. Because it's really cold, right? So I think that's all it is. But yeah, they are booking it through the snow and just absolutely risking everything.
So here's my question. If they're booking it, there's these 2 knots that are around Romaine. They're surrounded by weaves against eavesdropping. I thought weaves against eavesdropping were located in a place. I didn't think you could carry them with you. That's a very odd, like, I feel like that is a magic system thing that I want to point out. Like, if they're traveling and they have the weaves of eavesdropping around them, they're not, do they put it on like the horse and have it travel with them? Like, how are they doing that? As opposed to just because every other time you set up the weaves to prevent anyone from eavesdropping on a tent or on a room or on a building or just around you in place. We've never seen those weaves. We don't see wards move.
Huh.
I just assumed it was centered on the weaver.
Well, I guess, yeah, if you use a weave against eavesdropping and oftentimes, yeah, you touch it along a building or whatever, I suppose it would make sense to just kind of, on all of the outlying horses, kind of like run it under their bellies or whatever and across their chests and their rumps like in a circle and tie it over them, and then that way it would be mobile. Because it seems like you can anchor it and then just hold the knot. I don't know. Good question.
I just had a moment where I was like, wait, how is that moving?
I just assumed that the things were always like just in like a bubble around the person and was centered on them, and they would always be in the center of that bubble. And so if they're moving on a horse, then clearly the wave moves with them. And if they're in a tent, they're going to make it the shape of the tent. Like that was how I assumed the mechanic worked.
But then does it move, if they're moving within the tent, does then the bubble move so it's centered on them still, or do they move within that bubble?
I mean, certainly the implication is that they move within the bubble, not that it keeps rotating. I hadn't thought about it that far, but I mean, I don't see why you couldn't make it anchored versus unanchored, right? There's the balls of light that follow the hand that you could anchor to a wall. Sure. Like, I don't see why a weave against eavesdropping wouldn't be like that, where like it can be in its free floating state or hooked onto a building.
Okay. I can buy that. I had a moment reading this being like, that doesn't make sense to me. Wards should be in a place, not on a person.
That's fair. I just never thought of the question. I mean, thank you for bringing it up, because like the mechanics work, I think, but I never thought about it consciously.
Yeah, that never occurred to me. That's kind of cool. All right.
Which then makes me like all the weaves against Forsaken and Shadow Spawn. What if you have that weave that can kill a Shadow Spawn if it comes within it? Is that something that can be moved? Could you have a mobile defensive ward?
Front toward enemy?
Yeah.
I don't see why not. I mean, I really feel like the only limit is your mind when it comes to what you can do with the power. Like, it's a very Teleron-Riyadh style thing, if you really think about it. Like, they have these conventional weaves and these conventional ways of doing things, but I think that if you were to innovate with the power, you could do all kinds of cool shit.
So you're talking like Green Lantern rules. The only limit is your imagination?
I am not familiar with Green Lantern, aside from the fact that it exists, but sure.
The Green Lantern's power is that he can manifest anything he can think of.
Oh,
as long as his ring is all charged up.
Yeah. So Teleron Riyadh IRL.
All right.
Taril.
I don't.
Taril. Okay. Delana gets pointed out as a raging dark friend with Halima as clearly her handler. It's just blink and neon sign, because Delana doesn't join in the Romaine conversations and instead gets comforted by Halima, who's talking to her constantly, and Delana looks so worried. It's like, that's because Halima is saying she's going to skin her alive
if things don't go the right way
when they get back. Like, that's why Delana vomits later, is because of all the things that Halima is whispering in her ear right now.
Halima's not trying to make her feel better. She's trying to make her feel worse. That's not comfort.
Well, Delana vomits also because you see before she votes, she's looking, trying to find her, and she can't find her, so she's like, I don't know whether I should vote yes or no, and finally just makes a decision.
Halima can't hear what's going on, so Halima doesn't even know what to signal. Although I had a moment where I thought perhaps there's a point where Delana's messing with fire drops on her necklace.
It's just her being nervous.
And I want to make it a listening device,
No.
but it's not.
No, we'll get there when we get there, but no.
But I love this bit where, Egwene is noticing that both Ramonda and Lilane are surrounded. Each of them has like 3 sitters that are their lackeys, and so they're surrounded by their lackeys, and they're having their fierce conversations. And the warders are all worried too, and it says Egwene was just as glad to see it. If the sitters were troubled, they had not yet made up their minds, which I think is, clever and observant and kind of great.
Yeah, I also had that highlighted. Like, it means that they don't know what they're going to do yet, and that's where she wants them. And it's all because the warders look uneasy. Like, that's how she's able to deduce the whole thing. It's great.
She asks if there's any information about the Aes Sedai and Tower Guards in Andor. We know that's because Elida sent Tovann to go take out the Black Tower.
Yes, that is Tovann and 47 others, or 46 other sisters. I think it's a 47-person sister party. There's obviously guards. Guards are people too. Sorry, guards.
Didn't she send 50? Like, wouldn't you just send the whole round number of 50?
There were 50. What happens, the reason that the Egwene's people get told they can bond 47 is because 3 Ashaman get bonded by...
Oh, yeah.
So 47 is the difference.
Yeah, so there are 50 Aes Sedai in the party.
That's where that number comes from. Yes.
We don't know exactly what the timeline is, but I'm assuming that it's pretty close to when Tovann is going to hit the Black Tower, because that's going to be in a few chapters.
Yeah. Yeah, that has to be happening almost concurrently with this.
I mean, I mean, at this point, like, they've been detected, they've been seen sneaking, and word has gotten to Elaine. I almost want to say, like, maybe they've already hit it.
There's probably a timeline. There's probably days where we can figure this out, but it's got to be happening about concurrently. Because, like you said, like, the rumors have reached a certain pitch where it's like, clearly they've done the thing.
Yeah, and because the Black Tower is south of Camelin, it's quite a ways for the Aes Sedai to move through, and it's a lot of Aes Sedai and a lot of Tower Guards, so it's just sort of like, that's a big enough group of people to get the rumors going.
But the rumors have to travel too. That's the thing.
But rumors will usually travel along lines of commerce, so like merchants will send their pigeons and stuff, so that can generally travel a decent bit faster.
That's a good point.
You know what it says? It says there are 50 rumors and no facts.
50, because there are 50 Aes Sedai. Well done. Well done.
Nice, Jordan.
Clever.
Nice. And then, they just kind of blow it off because it's like, there's always rumors of sisters sneaking about. Like, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing they can do about the PR, right? They're like, well, that's just a thing. And then on the next page, she thinks it actually is really actually about the Black Tower. Like, she isn't actually dismissing this. It's just as a PR issue, they can dismiss it because it's always rumors. But like, realistically, it actually means that the Black Tower thing is going down, and that's a problem. But she needs to pluck the chicken in front of her, not the one in a tree that might be in another country and not exist, which is just so down country wisdom. And I love it. It
reminds me a lot of when she's like, clean the patch of floor in front of you before moving on. It's the same saying, just in a slightly different way.
Just super practical.
It's one of the things that I admire most about Egwene as far as using her as a role model. It's like, what would Egwene do? Egwene would pluck the chicken in front of her, not the one in a tree in another country that might not exist. Like that is, take that approach. That's one of the lessons I take from Egwene.
Yeah. Yeah, just very practical. You got to deal with whatever bullshit is here. You can't focus on other bullshit and get all swept up in it. She's very good at managing anxiety and not taking stuff on that weight on that she can't carry or should not have to carry.
Which is incredible, given that she's the Amerlin fucking seat. Like, that is a person who takes on an incredible amount of responsibility for the world. Right? The entire world is something she is in charge of protecting. And yet we're saying that Egwene has good boundaries around what she can and can't control. And it's just like, this is why she's such a good Amerlin.
Okay. Next thing I have is that Sheriam's being shitty to, that was actually before the chicken, but Sheriam's being shitty to Swan. I think partly because Swan doesn't have any excuse to be sore in her saddle, whereas Sheriam got her ass beat by Arengar, and Swan's just a bad rider, so she's being catty about it.
This is the multiple references to Sheriam having a sore ass.
Yep. And then they get back to the camp, and she immediately gives Sheriam instructions to get the haul together, and then Sheriam starts pushing her for why.
So we want to talk about Bryn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bryn does this very interesting thing where he tries to stay with her for longer and then tells her that she has him and 30,000 men at her back. And like, it doesn't matter what happens. Like, and there's all these looks at Swan. And it's just this really open declaration of like, I'm in this for love and glory, not the money. Like, I will back you and your mentor all the way. And it's, why is he doing this now? I mean, obviously because he can read the political situation much better than anyone gives him credit for. And I love the comment from Swan. He almost thinks like a woman sometimes. It's like, I mean, first of all, the ridiculous sexism, the men are from Mars, women are from Venus sexism just baked into the prose, but also like, yeah, Swan's a lesbian. That's she likes this person who she thinks like a woman because she falls in love with women.
Yeah.
And not what that says about Bryn, but that's where Swan's head is at.
My ex-husband was a great big woman, so it's like...
Bryn, I think, is making a move because he's realizing Egwene is making her move. So he's been waiting for her to take the first step, and now that she has, and he knows what she's doing because he's that brilliant and can read the room that well, he's like, yes, you have my support in this move that you're making. He doesn't understand exactly what the move is. He doesn't know the Tower of Law or anything like that, but he sees that Egwene put herself in a situation where she was supposed to turn that over to Romaine and didn't. And therefore, the move has to be made now.
Yeah.
That's how he knows. I always wondered how he knew. I'm like, he's smart, but like clearly RJ's expecting us to be able to keep up. And
yeah, he was able to read the sitters' faces, the tension, the fact that probably Ramonda and Lelaine were kind of like on the edge of their seats waiting for it to get passed off, and then probably staring daggers at the back of Egwene's head when Egwene didn't pass it off.
And the two knots all the way back. Like, he knows what's going on there. Yeah.
And I also feel like, just for Gareth Bryne himself, you know, who more or less like raised Elaine, you know, as much as he gives Egwene respect and everything that's due her, he also, you know, sees this is some poor kid that they scapegoated and put in charge of this shit, and it's bullshit, you know, so she's doing her best. Swan is doing her best to protect, you know, and help Egwene and help her succeed, and so he partly, I feel like, throws himself into this because it's bullshit and it's not right. Because, like, what they did wasn't right. You know, one of the reasons, like, people accuse Egwene of being, like, egotistical and everything and calling herself the Amerlin seat in her head, it's like she has to because she knows that she's just a kid and she's 18. And to keep herself from being full of doubt and not being able to do her job, she has to be able to see herself, you know, as the entity of the Amerlin seed, and to be that.
The power of the office over the power of the individual.
Yeah, she basically subsumes her individual self into being the Amerlin because she has to be able to do the job right and to grow. You know, as she says a couple chapters ago when the Ramonda and Lelaine are, you know, basically like, you're going to shut up, you're going to give us the authority, maybe you'll grow into that shawl or into the stole in 100 years. And she's like, I've got to grow now. And so, but yeah, it is bullshit. What they did was bullshit. And, you know, you don't do that to a young person. You don't put someone in that position and knowing that if they get, you know, hosed, then you're just going to throw them under the bus. And so for Bryn, particularly as a leader and an excellent leader in a position of leadership, you don't do that to someone who's supposed to be your own underling. And I think probably he feels like these women are so detestable to have done that to this person. And so he is determined to help her succeed, not just out of a sense of, you know, what he feels for Swan, but just out of a sense that it's right.
They've actually done it to a lot of the sitters.
Oh, yeah.
Right? A lot of these sitters, the whole too young thing, right? Like, all of these sitters are put in places of power for political reasons, not necessarily because of the best person. But what's interesting is all the two young sisters do end up voting for Egwene, shockingly.
Shocking.
All the two young sitters are all independent. None of the two young sitters are lackeys of Lelaine or Ramonda. So, it's interesting.
They don't know how the system works, so they can actually dream big and act from a place of idealism in a way that the other sisters can't. Millennial sitters versus boomers is exactly what's happening.
Jordan called it.
Yeah.
God, and the Romaine situation, when I look at, like, Congress.
I know, right?
And the, what are they called?
Senators?
Speaker.
Right.
Speaker of the House and the Senate leader. I'm like,
Those, right.
Yep, Ramonda and Lelaine. That's pretty much... especially
turtles.
Yeah.
Turtles all
especially
the way
in the
down.
Senate, man. You got, McConnell and Schumer with the VP who comes in and balances the two of them. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of the vice president Kamala Harris as Egwene thing is just a little too good for me. Like, we have an equally split Senate, and she comes in and just makes this deciding vote, and that's how she has her power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the whole thing with, and we can go forward till we actually get in the hall, so maybe I'll just wait. Right now they're eating. They got back and they're
waiting for the hall to convene because they've
Right.
called. So they're just like, hey, we're going to all get together. Everybody go back to your tents, get a bite to eat, take off your road travel clothes, wash your face, wash your hands, and we'll meet back in the hall here in a minute.
and yeah.
So I noticed somehow Chaisa had known Swan would be eating with her because Shiriam is able to tell Chaisa what to do.
Do you think it's a Shuriam to chase a thing?
I think that Shiriam is putting all of her chips on Chaisa, just making such good friends with Egwene that somehow she gets a hold on her. I think Chaisa is simple and uncomplicated, but the way Egwene thinks about her is simple and uncomplicated here over and over again. It's just weird. The repetition is weird. Somehow the woman had no... I looking at everything with Chaisa sideways because I trust Chaisa, but I don't trust what's happening around her. I'm suspicious. I've got my eyes on her. She can't get away with anything.
I'm still half convinced that Chaisa is Arengar with the Mask of Mirrors.
Exactly my point.
Have we ever seen them in the same room at the same point time?
Yes. We see them in the room at the same point at the same time, and Chaisa complains to Egwene, probably I think it's in book 10, that Chaisa makes her, or that Arengar makes her uncomfortable, and that it's like having a man watch you in the bath or something. She thinks that Arengar's a creeper.
That's exactly what Arengar would say.
Except that they're in the tent at the same time.
No, Arengar's way too dumb to say that.
Mask of Mirrors! Come on! I'm going all out with this one. All in.
Mask of Mirrors and ventriloquism. We got this.
Totally.
I think Chaisa has a real good read on people and is very smart compared to a lot of other people. And she's like, that Arengar, that Halima's a creeper.
Yeah.
So she gives me the creeps.
Yeah. And I mean, yes, maybe it just is that she's really observant and she knows that it's going to be a big night for whatever reason. Like, she might just be good at her job and a good person, but I don't trust it.
The number of times Jordan loves proving his characters wrong, and the number of times that Egwene says, there were no complications to Chaisa, I'm just like...
Yeah, there are complications.
It's a Chaisa gun, right? Like, let's fire this motherfucker. Come on. It's on the wall.
Chaisa's gun.
It just sits there unused for the rest of the series.
Yep, absolutely. Chaisa's gun. That is what it is now.
I love it.
And they're almost frozen. Also, just want to point out the whole thing where you can literally get frostbite from using the concentration trick. Egwene is like pretty cold, right? The roll is too hot for her to handle once she gets back into her body properly. Like, that's cold. That's real cold.
Yeah.
She's very cold.
And they're talking about Gareth Bryne being in love, which is, kind of... Meh.
That's cringy.
Yeah, the whole, like, she doesn't know how... She can't concentrate because she's just thinking about guys and all this, like... Yeah.
I mean, okay, I'm not gonna... That's 100% totally believable. The first 3 months I was with my wife, I almost forgot to pay my rent.
Nice.
I happened to look at my watch. Fortunately, I had my watch on that had the date, and I was like, wait, it's March 4th or something? My rent, if I don't pay it today, I'm gonna have to pay a late fee. Oh shit. So yeah, I feel like it's believable, and I don't know, people feel like, I've heard people complain that, she's so unkind to her friend, to be like, I'm either going to tell him, I'm going to pay him off, get your shit together, but I'm like, I feel like Egwene is a good leader, a leader can't, put their friends above leadership, so she's like, pull your head out of your ass, or we got to deal with this problem, I have to have you in, working condition.
But I love what actually solves the problem isn't her telling her to pull her head out of her ass, it's her convincing Suian that Brynn loves her back.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
that we see this massive change in Suian when Egwene's like, so why did Bryn risk everything to support me? Can't think of any reason other than he loves you. Is basically what she says, you know? And,
yeah, it totally.
And immediately Suian turns around and is like, okay, let's back to work. Oh, that's great. And then she's singing songs about boys and and eating food. And all of a sudden her mood is a 180 as soon as Egwene points out that Bryn loves her in return.
Because her big fear is that what if he doesn't like me back? And yeah, I agree with you, Morgan. I love how Egwene handles this. What's cringe to me is how Jordan writes the way she frames it and the internal model. It's Jordan. Yeah. I get the dynamic, but it's cringy to read.
Yeah.
But also hopeless romantic. It's cringy by design.
I have to read this. I don't have time to be in love. I barely have time to think between working for you and him. And even if everything goes right tonight, I'll have twice as much to do. Besides, her face fell and she shifted on the stool. What if he doesn't return my feelings? She muttered. He's never even tried to kiss me. All he cares about is whether his shirts are clean.
That's the cringiest fucking 90s. He's never even tried to. He fucking respects your boundaries, and he sees that you aren't ready. That's what you're mad about. Oh God, he understands that consent is critical.
And how dare Bryn understand consent? It's
And yes, Jedi Pants in chat is right. It's worse than the 90s. It's teenage 90s. It's written for teenagers, but Swan is in her 40s.
But never got her teenage
it's
years.
It's just, she says right down here, it's as if I never kissed a man before. And she had a whole relationship with Swan. It's written like she's 16 and she is empirically not. It's why it's cringy.
I feel like though Jordan really does say what he's trying to say is she devoted her whole life to being the Emerald Seed at such a young age that even though she's kissed a guy, she's never been in love. She's never had a relationship. She's never had a crush.
She has had a relationship. She has had a crush.
Jordan didn't acknowledge. Yeah. I mean, Jordan didn't acknowledge that as a relationship.
That's why it's cringe. That is why it's cringe. It's not because romance. It's not because new love makes you stupid. That's not the cringy part. It's that part.
Well, I mean, as someone who's looking for friends with benefits on Tinder, dating men and dating women is different. So it's just kind of maybe it's that. She had something much more just organic and great with Moraine, and Bryn is an alien world because he's a man and she doesn't even know what to do with that. So, you know.
I mean, as someone who married the third person they ever dated, I don't have a lot of, experience to draw from on the vagaries of relationships.
Yeah.
Just the one that's going very well, but
every relationship is different in its own unique way.
Yeah.
In the same way that individuals are different, the relationship between any two individuals is unique.
Well, that's obvious.
I would think that was true. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I get what he's trying to do. It's just cringy the way he did it.
Oh yeah, it's 100% cringe. And I think it's one of those things of this is how girls think about boys. And it's just kind of
not all girls, not even most, maybe.
So
to judge by the response of most people to these sections, but whatever. It's still cute that all it takes is a total blind spot that she should have spotted being pointed out to her to turn her mood around, because she is smart enough to see that Bryn is staying because he loves her, but she's so tangled around him that she's not noticing that until someone else points it out. It's this really obvious kind of thing, and it's adorable that she doesn't notice it, and that's because she's besotted, right? That's why she misses it, is because she's completely besotted and is just so sucked into micromanage. She's not seeing the forest for the trees. It's adorable, and then she gets her appetite back, which is good.
And then they're talking about basically the logistics of how it's going to have to go down once the hall gets called, how she's going to have to be careful of her timing.
There's a sentence here where she says she was surprised she hadn't dreamed of it. They had honed and refined what Egwene had to say so many times. I don't know that's just a common saying, but whenever Egwene and dreaming comes up, I'm is there something there where she hasn't dreamed of it with Agenor and Halima?
I did not flag that as suspicious.
Because it is a common saying. So I think I may be reaching at that point. But I was wondering if anyone else had a...
I didn't notice it.
No.
No.
What I noticed was the line she has about her father. It's one of I think the only time that her father gets mentioned in the whole series. She says, I have sailed the fingers of the dragon in the dark, she said seriously, and netted a lionfish once with my father. It can be done. One of the hardest, most dangerous hyperbole-tastic things that she uses over and over again. She's like, well, I have actually done that with my dad. Like, it's possible. It's just, it's one of the barest glimpses of her story that we ever get. Her life before the tower. We just don't. This is one of the only clues about who she was before. And
she's using it as an analogy to, like, doing a very risky thing for a high payoff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. To risk everything on a gamble and just be skillful enough to land it and make it work. And that's what Egwene fucking does because she has the best teacher.
For sure. And yeah, Egwene is making a comment about how Suian is having a lot of real gallows humor, which isn't to Egwene's taste. It's totally to my taste.
It's great.
Egwene doesn't have much sense of humor.
She really doesn't. That's the one thing.
One of her shortcomings.
It is one of her shortcomings. And one of the reasons why I think some people don't like her that much.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I mean, I'd never want to be her friend, but I think she's fucking awesome. So
right. She's a tough woman. Not a lot of room for fun.
You don't necessarily want your leaders to be funny.
Well, I mean, leaders in their own nature to be good leaders aren't particularly friend material, and I feel like that's like a tough thing that people don't want to give her any credit for, is that it's just sort of like you can't really be a good friend necessarily and be a good leader. You can't take individual people into account when you're being a good leader, and that's tough, but often true.
I gotta read the Suian quote. I wish I could be there to hear them howl. Somebody's going to before much longer, and it rather was them than us. I never had the voice for singing. She actually sang a little snatch about staring across the river at a boy and having no boat.
And she was right. Her voice was pleasant in its fashion, but she could not carry a tune in a bucket.
But the fact that she's like singing about boys, like, oh, it's so fun to see her just like, okay, now back to, she's so giddy. She's giddy. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that she sings out of tune and completely. Like, you have to have flaws, right, in people who are super competent. She's so competent she can't carry a tune in a bucket, not even a little fisherman's song from her. It's like, it's adorable. I love that. I love it.
Just so like much. A parody song.
I love that she's so excited because she's been waiting to get to this point. Like, she's like laid everything out and has been waiting. She's had her idea about how could we get to this, if we do this and if we do this and if we do this. And so from the beginning, she's kind of like, they have to get a strong Amyrlin seat. If the Saladar Aes Sedai elect a Hall of the Tower, if they get an Amyrlin, if they get someone they can manipulate, well, that didn't work, but someone I can guide and help and work with as a team, if we get to a place where, we can declare war on Elida, and if we have a war, then we can control a hall that is divided in more ways than RJ actually even shows, because he's showing you the unreliable narrator, and so Egwene isn't even aware of all of the nuance of the divisions of the hall. And so it's just it's so interesting to watch everything play out. And so, yeah, Suian is in a position here where she should be giddy, because it's just sort of like her mwahaha master plan that she was probably talking with Lyanna about in front of a fire while she was still looking for Saladar in Book 5 is hitting this really important jumping off point to make shit get real.
This has been an idea and a dream for so long, and now it's basically out of her hands. Now it's in motion, and it's in the hands of the pattern now. And yeah, she's flicked the first domino and just gets to sit back and from that moment of despair around the fire, being like, I think I can wage war on that motherfucker that ousted me. She's like, it's going to happen tonight. The declaration's going to happen tonight, or we're all going to die. Either way. This is great. Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought about how important this is for her. I really focus on the Egwene-ness of it. But for Suian, this is massive. This is a huge one. And she got told that the boy likes her back. It's the best day ever.
Not so great for Sheriam, who's super, butthurt, no pun intended.
Literally.
That Egwene won't share any information with her. And it's like, why are you doing this? All of it today at the lake, calling the hall tonight. Why'd you have us spend all day yesterday talking about Logain to everybody we met? I think you might share it with me. I am your keeper. I did swear fealty. And Egwene's like, meh, I tell you what you need to know.
It's a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know.
Yeah. And then Sheriam I have to tell you, Sheriam said bitterly, I think tomorrow Ramonda or Lelaine will be your keeper of the Chronicles, and I'll be serving a penance for not warning the hall, and I think you might envy me. Egwene nodded. All too possible. Shall we go?
I love that. She's like, yeah, that could happen.
Yeah.
She's in the same place as Swan, where she's put in all this work. I mean, not from the same place of despair, but she's put in all this work, and now it's moving, and she can't change the trajectory. Now everything is formulaic. All that's left to see is how people vote. Like, it's in motion. She's not gonna change how she's doing anything at this point. So there's a shift for her too.
All her upcoming arguments have been rehearsed. She knows what she's going to say. There's no making anything up on the spot. Like, this is...
Yeah, the only thing is the timing to make sure that Ramonda or Lelaine don't manage to speak before she does, so that she can call the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they make it a point to put up the tent, because it says most often in the past 2 months the hall had convened, much as they had yesterday morning, just standing out, or perhaps squeezed into one of the larger tents, so they actually erect the fancy pavilion.
You need the fancy pavilion for the declaration.
I have another one power question.
Okay.
They are skimming to Saladar and traveling back. That makes sense, right? They don't know the area, so they skim from where they are to a place they know and then travel back. But once you've traveled back once, you've opened up a gateway, just leave it open. Right? Why do you then have to skim repeatedly back to where you came from?
You don't want to spare anyone to use the energy. You only need to do it once a day. It takes like a flash of power versus holding a weave all day. That would be exhausting. And you wouldn't be able to go very far away. You'd be tethered to the spot. You can't just tie off gateways. It'd be cool if you could. It's probably a Turum Grail for that. But I think that's why. Morgan, do you agree? Yeah,
I would think tying up a gateway is dangerous, and holding a gateway, I feel like, for one thing, it's just politically not very realistic, because Aes Sedai would bitch about having to do it. Yeah, I feel like also just, nobody's going to want to stand around and hold it open.
I always think it would be just helpful to have a gateway open back to your home base at all times.
Yeah.
As far as an army goes.
It's too energy intensive.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I mean, I feel like it's not that hard to have just like one Aes Sedai assigned. With all the Aes Sedai you've got, like, have one assigned to the gateway at all times. Seems like a pretty simple solution, but whatever. They didn't. That's not that important.
Well, and they've been traveling this whole time. You're not going to hold a gateway open while you travel, because gateways are fixed to locations, so you can only set them up when you aren't on the move. So, but I think it's the political expediency of that's too energy intensive. Like, no one's going to agree to that. And it's a new weave. Not that many sisters can do it.
No, and it takes powerful sisters to do it, which are the ones who you can't command to do things like that because they're powerful.
Right.
All right, other question. Pavilion has been erected only twice since leaving Saladar, both times for a trial. Any idea what those trials were about? Who they were for? What the hell's going on with it? Like, we've heard nothing about trials, nothing about setting this up before, unless I'm completely missing something.
No, nope. We don't hear anything. I'm guessing it not for anything particularly exciting, or else basically like garden variety type crimes. Maybe not crimes that Aes Sedai committed, but crimes that serving people or soldiers committed. Though I'm supposing if soldiers committed crimes, like, Bryn would deal with them. I don't know. But yeah, I don't think it, like, crimes on a level that Aes Sedai committed.
I agree. I think that the fact that we have no other information tells us a lot about the crime. Clearly it wasn't done by Aes Sedai, and clearly it wasn't done to Aes Sedai. Maybe some property damage, but definitely not personal injury. Soldiers, it probably would have been taken care of completely in the soldiers' camp. Bryn would have handled it entirely in-house. So it has to be some kind of, like, probably property theft, possibly bodily harm between servants in the Aes Sedai camp. But it's not a big enough deal to have been out of the ordinary or like dark friendery. It's just the normal crime rate so to speak, of such a small city on the move. That was my guess about that, because this is the only information we get. But yeah, they've got their full fancy pavilion with the boxes and the cloth coverings and everything's set up, and there's rugs. It's all very formal.
And everyone's there except Alana.
Yeah, who comes rushing in at the last minute looking flustered. And every single Aes Sedai is in a ring around the pavilion. Like, no sisters anywhere in the camp are anywhere else other than in this ring. Sorted precisely by rank, because they all are very desperate to hear what's going to happen, because they all know that there's a power struggle going down. I'm guessing where they have the same, as a group, they are at least as observant as Bryn. So they all know that whatever the big power struggle between Romaine and Romaine is, because they think that that's where the struggle is. They think it's a Romaine struggle. They don't think that it has anything to do with the game, but they think that it's all coming tonight. But also, Egwene's move, being all out in front, would be startling to everyone. So now it's like Romaine versus Egwene. Oh my god. So they're all wondering. Everyone knows that fuckery above their pay grade is afoot. So to speak.
Yeah, looks like. I mean, I can imagine being super curious. You always want to know what gossip is going on among the higher-ups, particularly if it's going to affect you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would never actually want to be a sitter, but...
Oh, God, no. Oh, dog, no.
Yeah. Maybe the head of an odd job, but never a sitter.
Yeah, I don't even think being head of an Aja sounds like any fun. You gotta be in charge of Aja politics.
Yeah. I want a job where I can be lazy as possible.
So they open the ceremony with a formula older than the oath against speaking untruth, from a time when almost as many Amerlins died by assassination as by all other causes put together. And that is another one of those fun little we get nothing else kind of clues about what the earliest versions of the White Tower were. Maybe even when Aes Sedai remembered the Age of Legends levels of putting the White Tower together.
And it's an interesting little intro ceremony, because it's like, I will bind according to the law to face the law if you intrude. Basically, anyone who steps in and is unexpected, Quamesea, how are we going to say that? Quamesa is going to she's the only one holding the power, and she immediately has permission to bind, and in, I assume, flows of air, anyone who steps into the pavilion.
That's what I was thinking.
Was that what that's about? I was so confused about what that meant. That makes sense. Using the power in the hall is frowned upon strongly, but if your Amerlins keep dying by assassination, you can have one person assigned a very specific use of the power. Like, I am the one person in this room with a gun, and I will shoot to kill. Everyone
comes in here to disrupt it, I will shoot. I have permission to shoot you, basically. Or bind you.
Mm-hmm.
And they give it to the youngest sitter. Like, if you're the young one, you're low ranking, you get all, like, the collateral duties.
Is Quamesea...
She's
the youngest of the sitters.
She was the like, designated titty starer when they did the whole, like, raising...
Oh, yeah. I am a woman. My memories prove this. Ugh. That's more of the weird hall stuff. Yeah. So they give these duties to the youngest sister. And it makes sense, because the youngest sitter is going to be the least valuable as a member of the body, and is also going to be the most likely to get attacked by an assassin.
Because I did my research last night on all of the sitters. So it's like, Quamesa's the youngest by a few months, because 3 of the sitters are 50. Her, Delana, and Aladrin.
Aledrin?
Aledrin.
I think it's how the audiobooks say it.
Yeah, but I think it said that Malind, who's one of the Greens, she's the one who's been Aes Sedai the least amount of time. She's like 9 years older, but because it took her longer to become Aes Sedai, she's been Aes Sedai the least amount of all of the sitters, which I thought was interesting, and just some of Jordan's little bits that he sprinkles in.
Yeah, there's a lot about all these sitters that it's hard to keep track of for me, because there's a lot of names.
That's interesting that they have the age being marked by birth rather than by acquisition of the shawl. So if you take a really long time to get the shawl but have a decent power level, you're going to end up shooting past tons of people who know, like, so much more. Oh my god, another flaw in their system? Did I find one? Wow! Such
shocking.
So they seal the pavilion in a ward. This one's not moving, I would assume. And everybody outside can't hear. That includes Halima, because she's clearly not one of the sitters. Mm-hmm. And then without hesitation, Egwene just says, hey, who will stand to declare war against the usurper Elida?
Usurper, but yes.
What'd I say?
Usurper?
Is that not how that word?
That's what I heard anyway.
Is that not how that word is said?
No, usurper.
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 Wow, I can't say that word. Usurper.
It's one of those weird words.
I think my dyslexia has always put the P. It's UP in my head. I didn't realize that. Only looking at it now do I realize the P is at the end of the word, not the beginning.
That is such a relatable mood. You can speak politics, but you can't read
it's
words.
It's a weird word.
I still have a lead.
French class was really hard for me, okay?
Oh, I bet.
Oof. Yeah.
I ran away screaming from any opportunity to learn French. I never tried that.
I thought, being Canadian, I should try.
At least Spanish words are pronounced how they're spelled.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, the reason she has to go right into that with no formality, to go right from thinking about the ages of sitters and the puzzle Swan has into making this huge declaration, is because if Romaine gets a word in first, she's already lost control of the meeting. She has to move on that.
Because the only way she can make sure that this gets voted on is to call the question right away.
Because the law of war says you must answer this question. And so nobody thinks that she's using proper decorum or the rules correctly at all. But nonetheless, she asks the Hall to declare war on Elida as an individual person. Not on the Tower, not on the nation of Tarvalin, not on the Amerlin seat as an office, but on an individual woman. And the Hall is rather flummoxed because they expect to be sounded out on very important questions, not having to hear it for the first time while sitting in session.
I find it interesting that the last time they declared war was against Arthur Hawkwing, also an individual.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Not against his nation or his army or anything like that, against him. They don't like declaring war. They're really not into being in wars. They don't like doing that.
No, they'd much rather send arms to other countries and have them fight wars.
They're big fans of proxy wars. They do not like getting their hands dirty.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say one thing here while Lelane's speaking, and she says, open the novice book, we would have grandmothers clamoring to be tested, which is foreshadowing when they get that really, what's the... Sharina, who's an extremely powerful grandmother.
Literal grandmother.
And it's like, yeah, you would. That's a good thing.
And she's stronger than everybody else. I don't know if she's stronger than Olivia, but she's definitely stronger than Nynaeve, and that shuts up even Lelaine when she's there and her potential is showing. But yeah, it's funny how she tries to sidestep Egwene's question with just casually foreshadowing exactly what's going to happen and how much is going to sting her pride.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with grandmothers learning how to channel. I think it's the most ridiculous bias to think that only young women should have the right to learn to channel. Like, that is horseshit.
Only young women have the right to be indoctrinated into the Aes Sedai mental state. It's much easier to create a cult if you recruit young.
It's true.
It's true.
I don't like cults. I also don't like ageism, which this also is.
It's not unfair to say that, someone who is older will have a harder time submitting themselves to a strict discipline or, but that doesn't mean they can't.
And it's not going to be true for everyone equally. Like,
exactly.
Why not have the damn book open? Women who won't conform will self-select away.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just kind of like, and plenty of young people aren't good at, being told what to do, So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's almost like Egwene, she had been wanting to open the novice book anyway, but like throwing that out there gave like basically something to rile up the Hall, get them something to talk about to distract them so that they would be focused on that because she knew it would piss them off. And then it basically gave her the opportunity to snake in there, call this question, knowing that they would be upset about it and really thinking about that, or at least they're thinking about that, and even Ramonda's thinking about that, but Ramonda has also been trying to think of a way to weaken and possibly get rid of Lelaine, and she was working on that even in previous chapters, because they're trying to I feel like RJ makes the White Tower very military in a lot of ways, and one of that is always having to have somebody to, go under the bus if something goes wrong, and whether they're really responsible or not. So it's like, because the Bowl of the Winds didn't work exactly how it should and winter became very harsh, it has to be somebody's fault. Somebody's got to get blamed for it. So because Miralil was supposedly the one in charge, it's her fault. And then because Lilane suggested Miralil, it's Lilane's fault. And, trying to draw all these lines together to have somebody get thrown under the bus, because that just seems to be how things work in, structures of government in the US. And it's very much how things work in the military. It's just sort of like, who do we hang this blame on? Somebody will be accountable, whoever we can just, and whether they're actually the person who is actually responsible is almost never the one called to account. It's just somebody that they can hang the blame on.
Yeah, but where do you think Jordan experienced that?
Exactly. Exactly. It's something that you see in lots of different places, but it's very much something that you see in the military or in other governmental agencies, like the FBI, or just anything that's, like that type of stuff. It's very much part of the culture of who goes under the bus. And so that seems to be a big thing for the Aes Sedai. And yeah, I'm sure that he was very familiar with it. And so that's what Ramonda is looking to do for Lilane, so she's distracted by that because she wants her out of the way.
Yeah.
But because of the Tower Law, Egwene says, nope, you got to answer my question first. Mm-hmm. And they turn to Takema.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Takema.
Which I think we have to have a discussion about.
I want to just go back, though, real quick before we get into that. Lilane says that they don't declare war on individuals. So I guess they didn't on Arthur Hawkwing as an individual.
Maybe.
But then she immediately says the last time we declared war was on Arthur Hawkwing. So I'm like,
she says that here?
Not Lilane, but Egwene says the last time.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember all the things. Okay. Okay. Never mind. Yes. Takema.
Hold on.
Because Takema is great. I'm sorry. There was a train going and
it's fine.
Ruined it.
Chapter 19, it's actually right here. The last time the tower, Egwene held her breath. The White Tower had sent soldiers and a number of wars over the last 1,000 years, but always in response to a plea for help from the least two thrones. It had always been their war, not the towers. The last time the tower itself actually declared war had been against Arthur Hawkwing.
But perhaps they specifically declared war against his empire?
Sure.
And not him himself.
It must have been. Must have been for Lilane to make that claim, assuming she knows her history. But it's one of those things. Like, are you really Arthur Hawkwing or Arthur Hawkwing's empire? Like, that's sort of because he was attacking the tower, right? Like, that's why they declared war on him. He was attacking them. So I don't know. That's a weird. It's a weird being like, we don't declare war against individuals. And like, I mean, yes, but when the individual is a dictator of a place that you declare war against, isn't that kind of the same thing? I would agree. Yeah, it's a weird distinction and distraction. Takema.
Which I think is a cool name, just to start off with. Like, it's a really good name. Cool name. Like, Jordan, do less Syrian, Shireen names and give me more Takemas.
Yes.
But she's got she remembers everything she's ever read, the photographic memory. And so that's what makes her special.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that she's old and has read a lot of stuff. Like, those two things combined mean she's essentially a walking library.
Yeah, she's a perfect brown. We stand Takema.
So she knows the law of war.
Which very few sisters do.
And she knows that immediately what Egwene is doing in declaring war. She's taking power. Why doesn't Takema speak up against it? Why does she...
I was going to ask that.
That's my question. And that's, I think, what we need to do is why does she say it is and then immediately shut her mouth?
Yes. Why?
I think that there's a handful of reasons. I think, first of all, because it is not done. You don't open your mouth and continue to speak in the hall. A little bit later on, once they call the vote, Janya basically stands up and is sort of like, we might as well, and she begins to talk, and it says she was not supposed to speak, but her set jaw and sharp gaze dared anyone to call her down. So it's like, when they call the vote, you get 5 immediate stand-up yes votes, of Janya, Esmeralda, Moria, Samalin, and Melind, and then there's a hesitation, and then Moria basically yells, specifically at Lelaine and Lyrell, because they're sitting down. They should be standing because they're both blues, but Lelaine is distracted, staring at Ramonda like, what's your game? What are you trying to play to, like, throw me under the bus or try to get me unchaired or whatever? And so Moria yells at her like, shut up about your resolve if you're not going to stand up and, support this. And Egwene's comment is, if Janya broke the rules doing this, then Moria is making a huge deal. So I feel like Takima, with her understanding of the law and rules and everything, isn't going to say anything, partly just because you're not supposed to.
Right. Okay. That's fair. She's low ranking and she's very observant of the rules. Mm-hmm. So she's just like, I have to say something, but I'm going to say as little as possible. But Egwene's still worried she's going to say something. So it's not, and it's only a custom, right? It's not like it's a law that she can't say anything. It's just the custom to not say anymore. Yeah,
you're not supposed to, but it's not like you're going to get in trouble. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, TC Traveler makes a fascinating point in chat. Takima decided to leave it to the sitters to let them vote on their own knowledge without educating them further, even though she knows what they're doing. But she's clearly torn on whether she should be educating them. That might be it.
And I think there's a reason. So there's one other thing that has already happened that we need to talk about with Takima.
Oh.
Morvren.
Yes.
In chapter 16, Egwene sends all of the Shuriam 6 basically out to sow her seeds. She says, I want you to spread this thing. Morvren is one of those 6. Mm-hmm. She sees Morvren talking to Takima and goes, why is she talking to Takima and not one of the other 2 sisters? That doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. I think what she says is, listen, Egwene's going to make a play. I want you to shut up, is basically, I think, what Morvren says. Because I'm not sure exactly what she says to her. Because I looked up Morvren, I don't get any details about this. This is all speculation. But it is weird that Morvren goes to Takima and not one of the other 2 Browns.
The reason that I think that Morvren went to Takima is because what Morvren's doing, what Shuriam said that she had them do, was to walk around and talk to everybody about Logain and the Reds. So I think what Morvren was doing was talking to Takima about Logain and the Reds. I think that the reason that Egwene was puzzled by it is because Takima is one of Lelaine's lackeys. Takima and Faisal and then Lyrell, one of the other blue sitters, are her 3 lackeys. And so for Egwene, because Takima kind of does whatever Lelaine says, she was kind of like, why would she talk to her? What's the point of that? It would make more sense to talk to Janya, who is like a real independent sitter, or to talk to Esmeralda. I think that's the other brown. The reason that she talks to Takima, I mean, I don't know what actually motivated Morvren personally to talk to Takima, but I think what made Jordan have Morvren talk to Takima is that 5 of the sitters in Saladar are moles from Elida. And Takima is one of those. And so 3 of the 5 moles from Elida believe the rumors about the Red Aja and Logain. And so it's one of the reasons why they're struggling. So I feel like because Takima is one of the ones that believes the rumors, she's sitting there and struggling because it's like Morvren has talked to her yesterday about Logain and the Reds. And so she doesn't want to say anything, A, because it's not her place, and B, because she's really struggling with her purpose about, what Elida did was wrong. She believes that even Elida herself might be behind Logain and the Red Aja, and so she doesn't say anything because it's just kind of like she lets it play out, even though she kind of knows where it's going.
Like 5 moles for Elida? I thought there was only 1.
Oh, no. So,
what?
Okay, sorry, they weren't Elidas moles. They're tower moles, though. Okay, my bad. Bayonin is Elidas mole.
Oh, heart attack avoided.
My mistake.
Okay, cool.
100% my mistake. So,
okay.
7 of the sitters, of the 18 sitters, are previous tower sitters. Mm-hmm. So, like, Lelaine and Lyrell were 2 blues. The 3rd blue in Swan's Hall was killed. And then Janya is an independent one. She was a brown and she left on her own because she was like, this is illegal, so she left. And then Ramonda used to be a sitter, but she retired, and even Swan they said she retired because she got upset that Tamara Spenya got the Amerlin seat. And so it says that she retired in like 273, or 973.
970, yeah.
Okay, and then Magla, Soroya, Faisal, Takima, and Verilyn. Those 5 were also sitters in Swan's Hall of the Tower. Elida did not call them to sit. So the sitters that Elida did not call to sit, the only one of them that stayed in the tower was Shane Harriman, or Suian.
Right, yeah.
Suian, yeah.
Or Shane.
The white.
So Janya left on her own. And then the blues obviously left, except for the one who got killed. And then these 5, because they didn't get called to sit, their sitters sent them out. And were like, go to Saladar and try to control and defuse the situation. All of them are either Ramonda's or Lilaine's lackeys. So basically, they're contributing to the kind of stalemate in the Hall of the Tower. They either, support Ramonda or they support Lilane so that they'll balance each other out and kind of try to keep the tower, the Saladar Tower from doing anything really drastic. And so that's kind of what's happening here.
There's one other clue I want to bring up. Later, Morvran gets annoyed that Takima supports negotiations. Mm-hmm. Doesn't want to negotiate. Takima does. With the White Tower.
Yes.
So that means Takima is trying to keep them basically from taking action so that they will eventually reunite with the White Tower.
What I'm gathering from this is that Morvran may have approached Takima just to make sure that her loyalties were as divided as possible. Like, she wasn't trying to convince her to come over to the other side. She was just trying to seed doubt in her enough that she would let the sitters make their own decision rather than sticking her oar in it.
Nodding.
Yeah, I think that it might have just been like she knew that Janya does her own thing. She's very much just an independent person. She spoke out. She stood up first. She was the first to stand up for Egwene to raise her for Amerlin's seat, and she's the first to stand to declare war. So she doesn't need to talk to her. And then as far as Esmeralda, she's young. She's a young sitter and one of the new sitters in the tower, or in Saladar, so she doesn't have to worry so much about her. Takima's the sticking point because she was a sitter before the tower split. And so she is one of the ones where it's like, that's important. And that's the kind of stuff that Egwene isn't really aware of because there's so much information that she just can't be given. Like, she was complaining to Swan at one point a few chapters ago about, oh, you're not giving me some information about the kin, are you, that you didn't tell, and then acknowledging to herself that she's trying to be like a goose being fat and trying to get all of this information. One of the other things that I noticed while I was looking this up is that Lilane and Ramonda are the only 2 sitters that ever served in the hall together, or that Lilane is the only sitter who served on the hall with Ramonda. Basically, Ramonda left in 973. Lilane became a sitter in 962. So they were sitters together for 11 years. And RJ never expounds upon that because there's no way that any of our POV characters would know anything about that. But I'm wondering if there's actually basis to their beef from long ago that we don't ever know anything about. And that, having maybe that the previous sitters from the tower, so like Magla, Soroya, and Verilyn, who are the ones who are Ramonda's lackeys, maybe don't like Lilane because they were in the tower with her, and so they naturally become Ramonda's friends. And then it's just kind of like, so there's all of this tower politics and even Aja politics that are all playing out beneath the surface that Egwene doesn't even know what's going on, that RJ has playing out. Which I think is just so very RJ of him to do that, because he, built up the Aes Sedai that way and gave them all of these layers that even after you've read the books 40 times, you're still like, wait, what?
Wheels within wheels. Yeah, that's a good point.
Within the wheel. Yeah, and definitely those 5 I'm seeing here in Crossroads of Twilight, chapter 16, Magla, Faisal, Soroya, Takima, and Verilyn suggest negotiating with Elida. So they very much want to go back to the tower.
They're the ones who do the negotiations.
Yeah.
And then when you finally, once in Gathering Storm, once you're finally hearing from the Aja heads and you're finally getting to understand what the actual mystery is behind the sitters who are so young, and realizing, oh, they're just placeholders so that when the tower gets together, you have people who you can just tell, yeah, it's time for you to step down and let, the big kids come back to the table, because the Aja heads were actually deciding, maybe it's time for us to take control of the tower, because obviously this Amerlin is not working out. And so they were the ones who made the decision to send these 5 sitters. And it never says in the books that they worried for the safety of those 5 sitters. It does suggest that in the companion, that because they weren't called to sit, because Elaida only called the 10 sitters that she felt she could trust to depose Swan, that they had them leave for their safety. But it does say that in the companion. So,
well, they weren't all sitters though when they were in the tower when Elaida had her coup. That's part of why. I mean, they're too young, right, to be sitters.
The young sitters were. I'm specifically talking about Magla, Soroya, Faisal, Takima, and Verilyn. Those 5. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Names is hard. I'm incredibly impressed at how you're holding all of this together.
Yeah. I have a reference open in front of me. That's the only way that I'm even coming close.
It down.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wrote it down. And then I have
that's too close to college for me. I just, I'm mostly over it, but I can't.
I never studied in college or did any of that kind of stuff. And it's why I have the energy to do it now.
I see.
And that's why I don't have a degree.
But you have a really cool podcast.
That's all that matters.
And you're running rings around us on the name salad. So, yeah, I think that that basically answers your question, Seth.
I mean, as close as we can get with the very limited information that we have about Takima and Morvrin and their motivations, because it seems like she would not want to declare war on Elaida. That's the sticking point with Takima. She supports Elaida. It seems like she would talk up to prevent the war. Something's keeping her from talking up in this moment. And I'm still not entirely convinced that there isn't a proper answer to that. There is a lot of complicated motivation and a lot of complicated politics that suggest she should be quiet, but there's no one answer to me that's necessarily satisfying, if that makes sense.
I think that's how she feels also.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like she's super conflicted because, she believes in the story of the Reds and Logain, and so she knows that Elaida needs to go.
Oh, that's
even though she wants the tower to be whole, and the whole point of her being there is to control and diffuse the situation, so she feels stuck.
So I think what I missed is the belief in the Reds and Logain. Where are you getting that from?
It says it in the Wheel of Time Companion. 3 of the 5 believe the stories.
Okay, so that's not in the books themselves. That's how I missed that.
No, that's all extra.
But I think that's what Morvrin was doing, was shoring up that aspect of the approach, and digging that story in and really being like, you do believe this, don't you? And
so she just keeps her mouth shut because she's conflicted about the Red Aja. That makes total sense.
And what I will point out is that in Towers of Midnight, when Egwene does the switcheroo of having the Hall take over control of the war, but I'll take over control of rulers or dealing with rulers, she barely gets the votes she needs before Takima opens her mouth and is like, hey, wait, because she doesn't keep quiet then, even though it's against the rules, and she just barely manages to get the votes she needs in time because Saren and
you fools, don't you know what you've done? Yeah, he's a king.
Yeah. So it's amazing how much all of this. It's amazing how much all of this comes down to the doubt of one woman who's like, this decision is above my pay grade. Mm-hmm. And her doubt is what allows Egwene to do this thing so far above her pay grade. Never think that you can't make a difference, even if you aren't in a position of power.
And who knows if she hadn't had her, her fealty swearers running around and talking to everybody about Logain and the Red Aja. If Morvrin hadn't been talking to Takima the day before, maybe she wouldn't have been quiet about it, but it's heavy weighing on her mind. Who knows?
Power of misinformation. Take note, kids.
The next page or so is Gwen's argument for declaring war. Was there anything in there that you really wanted to talk about?
I feel like you've given the argument that she gives so many times in explaining her whole setup before that I don't know that we need to go over it. This is where she tells us what you've been telling us, the audience, for the last several episodes.
The one thing I will point out is where she does say, you heard Arathel say she didn't want to become entangled in Aes Sedai affairs, yet they were willing to bring an army into Murundi and stand in our way because they aren't certain who we are or what we're about. Did any of you feel that they truly believe you are sitters? And so it says, Malind and Selida and Barana all look fierce-eyed, or they twitch, or they frown thoughtfully, because they were all sitters chosen in Saladar. They're all really young. So it's like all of these really young sitters, and all of the young sitters are independent.
Yep.
It's like the young sitters, Janya and Moria, are all the independent sitters. And they all vote yes for war.
All the young sitters feel insulted by the nobles, and they all vote yes for war.
They're all like, fuck this noise, don't infantilize us, we are sitters. So yeah, she specifically remarks upon the fact that they were just kind of like annoyed by that.
Yeah. But yeah, the only thing I have is just the line, once we declare ourselves at war with Elida, there can be no doubt. Like, we're tipping it over. We're moving this plot forward. It's just, And then, Janya gives this great argument of like, what the fuck are we waiting for? Which is great. I like it because the delaying tactic, the Lelaine, like, well, we're not moving a foot closer to Tar Valon, but we're spending money. And it's like, what are you going to do when you get to Tar Valon? You're going to crawl in and make up with Elida. That's what you're going to do. That is your entire fucking plan. Yeah. And it's a false argument to say, well, you're not spending money getting towards Valon. You are getting towards Tar Valon. And Janya is just, in this place of like, what are you dragging your feet about? I believe in this war. Like, let's go.
Yep. And Esmeralda jumps up because rises with Janya because they're both Browns. Yeah,
they're Browns and they're young, or Esmeralda's young. She's a new sitter.
Yep.
And then Moria jumps up. And, I think that Moria being Black Aja is almost beside the point. Moria is Blue Aja. She's Blue Aja. Elida stole the staff. She set up the false dragons in her belief, and for her, I don't even think it's about being a dark friend.
But I think it reinforces it, because the Black Aja right now wants Egwene in power. They want the tower to be split, and they think Egwene's weak. Halima, Delana, and Shiriam are all some of Egwene's biggest supporters, because they're black. And so I believe Moria is as well. I believe her marching orders are support Egwene, try and make her more powerful, vote for her.
That's fair.
Well, if that's the case, then why is Delana so Delana's just upset because the decision's being made?
Because she's so in Halima's pocket that she wants Halima to tell her what to do. She is terrified of Halima.
Yeah, and she's afraid she didn't make the right choice. She doesn't know.
Right.
But that's what I'm saying, is like, you just said there's a really strong argument that all the Dark Friends are in agreement with Egwene, so why would she not know what Halima wants her to do?
I want to say that the support Egwene is sort of the marching orders for the Black, but then but Halima was just whispering in Delana's ear, giving her all these if-then situations, and this doesn't fit any of those.
Oh.
And so Delana's like looking around being
because
like,
Halima didn't
know the plan.
Where Egwene's at.
And so Delana's like, this doesn't fit the plan. What do I do? Shit. So that's that. I don't want to be punished because I did the wrong thing, because I was given very specific instructions leading to this meeting, and this doesn't fall under any of them.
Okay. But I do feel like Moria's passion for this comes from her blueness.
Yeah, she's frowning down at Lyrell like, what the fuck? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, why are you... Obviously, the Blue should declare... the Blue should declare war on Elida without doubt. Right? That should be immediate, no problem. She's declared your Aja illegal. What is your fucking problem? Right?
Yeah.
Your Blue, declare war. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. She could be apathetically into it, or she could be like going for Elida's guts, which I think is where she's at, because, she's still Blue. Because the Aes Sedai do not renounce their Aja traits when they become Black Aja. It's not like a classless society. They're all one brotherhood kind of thing. No, they are all still very much who they are.
I don't think it's an either or. I think it's like both Black and Blue are telling her to do the same thing, so she pops up immediately.
Both the people she is, both get to do the same thing. She's all in on that.
When it says, among the green, Samelin and Malin stood together, and Faisal looked up with a jerk. A stocky, copper-skinned Amani, Faisal was not a woman startled by much, but she looked startled now, her square face swinging wide-eyed from Samelin to Malin and back. So she's one of the former sitters who got sent to Saladar, and she's just like, uh-oh. As her young whippersnapper, fresh-faced green sitters are like, yeah, we want to go to war.
Yeah, we want a millennial. AOC for president. Yeah. It's the young revolution. I never understood what all of this shenanigans was about. This makes so much more sense.
Seleta rises. We don't know much about Seleta. She's a yellow. You learn about her later on because you get a POV from Ramonda in like book 11. She starts to figure out about Halima and Delana, and she's thinking about sharing a tent with Seleta and how she's a spoiled Terran noblewoman and how she didn't want her for a sitter, but Magla insisted on her. So, she's not a very important character in the name Salad, but he does give her a little bit of personality just by giving us Ramonda's judgmental thoughts about her. But she is also young and independent and just, jumps right up.
In Knife of Dreams, she empties her trunk every morning, deciding on a dress. She's very picky about how what it wears.
Oh my God. Yeah. She's a spoiled noble. That's great.
Yep. And interestingly, because Quamesa stands, and then Aladrin and Barana are two white sisters who are pure name salad because they really have nothing to make them distinct, except that Aladrin draws Barana up. Like, she's like, hey, this is what we should do. But they're both really young. I'm guessing they probably share a room together in Saladar, probably share a tent, so they're just kind of joined at the hip.
And what white are we missing there?
Soroya. Soroya she's a Ramonda's lackey. Yeah,
and she votes no.
She votes no because she's one of the tower sitters.
Right. And Ramonda is like not happening.
And none of the sitters that get sent by their Aja heads vote yes for war. All of them vote no, and Ramonda votes no. Everybody else votes yes.
So Egwene is disappointed. Despite the fact that we just went through like a billion names and probably our audience is completely glassy-eyed from name salad at this point, Egwene is very disappointed at how few names are worth mentioning in that. Only 10. She thought she'd get way more unanimous support, and it feels like all hope is lost for a quick moment here for her.
And then Moria yells at Lelaine and Lyrell.
Because Lelaine and Lyrell are blue. And it's like, what are you doing?
You cannot tell me you give a shit about anything.
Right.
And not vote on a war on this bitch right now.
Yeah. Stand or hold silent from now about your resolve to remove her. And it says, Lelaine did not quite stare, but by her expression you might have thought she had found herself attacked by a sparrow. This is hardly worth a vote, Moria, she said in a tight voice. We will speak later about decorum, you and I. Still, if you need a demonstration of resolve, with a sharp sniff she rose and gave a jerk of her head that pulled Lyrell to her feet like strings. Lelaine seemed surprised that it did not pull up Vicel and Takima, too, because they were two of the tower sitters who attached themselves to her because supporting her meant that it caused Ramonda to not have as much power, so...
Right. And this whole paragraph is all blue internal politics. Yeah, those three are all blue, yeah.
Yeah, and then Takima is stunned.
Yeah, because she realizes that just means war was declared, and she knows what that means for power of the Hall.
And the interesting thing after Sheriam calls for the greater consensus, it says, Vicel half moved. So Vicel is one of the tower sitters that was sent by her Aja head. She is the green. She also believes the rumors about Loghain and the Reds, and so it's sort of like, I'm wondering if she almost feels tempted to join the vote, like she's so outraged by the idea that the Red Aja would have supported false dragons.
I think it's more that she's loyal to Lelaine, and when Lelaine stands up, she's like, oh, I need to stand up, but she's like, wait, no, I don't actually think I should.
Yeah.
Because she twitches when Lelaine stands up, and she's like, and she is on Lelaine's side, which actually makes it weird. Why doesn't she stand up now that I'm looking at it?
Because she's a loyalist for the tower.
Gotcha. Oh, she's one of the 5? Gotcha.
That's why she's shocked that Vicel and Takima don't stand up. They're both loyalists, and Lelaine's like, why aren't you standing? You're my lackeys.
They're lackeys with a ulterior motive.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They're only her lackeys because being her lackeys negates some of Ramonda's power.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Yep. In
the same way that the only reason that Soroya, Magla, and Verilyn are Ramonda's lackeys is because it helps counterbalance Lelaine's power.
So I have a technical legal question. What's the lesser consensus? I should know this, but I don't.
I want to say 2/3 because you have 8.
No, it's just a majority.
Is it just a majority?
Okay, so the lesser consensus is anything over 50%, and then the greater consensus would be
unanimous.
Whatever, unanimous. Okay.
2/3 would be 12 out of 18. So she does get 2/3.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She gets, yeah.
Let me do a quick Google.
Cool. Yeah, because I learned not too long ago about like the specific definition of a quorum, and I was wondering if that was relevant here, but now, of course, that definition has slipped away by the time we've actually gotten to this, and I was just like, is this another way of saying quorum? I'm confused.
The law seems really weird because the fact that they were able to depose Swan with the lesser consensus seems awfully sketchy.
The lesser consensus requires a 2/3 of sisters to stand and also has a quorum of 11.
Okay.
So you have to have at least 11 sisters to get the lesser consensus, and you have to have at least 2/3 of those stand. So 12 she needed 12.
Oh,
Absolutely needed 12.
All right. 2/3. So not just 51%.
No.
You have to actually get up to 66%.
To pass with the greater consensus, all sisters present must stand for it. In addition, the majority of the hall must be present, including at least one from each oddjaw. So there are circumstances where you get the lesser consensus and cannot get the greater consensus because there aren't enough people there.
Gotcha.
So that's according to the wiki.
Thank you.
But Ramonda flat out says you're not getting the greater consensus because I'm not voting for it if Lilane did.
Right.
Because she's a child.
Yes.
Because Romaine. Gonna Romaine.
Crunchy, wet, and real boring.
Honestly, Romaine is one of a really good lettuce. I like it.
I like Ramonda and Lilane, and I feel like if you read the chapter in Lord of Chaos right after Egwene gets raised to the Amerlin seat, where you get a point of view from each of them, he does his point of view so well because they're both very, very different people, and so just contrasting the two of them and showing how very different they are, I find is some of his best writing that he does as far as minor POVs.
Right, because you can easily see them as the same person,
but they're so
But then
different.
he develops them as very different people, and that has implications, like throughout the plot. The concept you brought up of them having a beef that goes back like literally 50 years. And all of that.
But I do find the Romaine nomenclature to be really useful because I get so tired of saying Ramonda and Lilane all the time.
Also, it's just funny as fuck.
Well, yes. Thank you very much.
Sometimes accidents are a good thing. So we get the law of war, the actual language of the law of war that makes this move the clever, brilliant twist in Egwene's arc that it is. The law of war states, as one set of hands must guide a sword, so the Amerlin seat shall direct and prosecute the war by decree. She shall seek the advice of the Hall of the Tower, but the Hall shall carry out her decrees with all possible speed, and for the sake of unity, they shall and must approve any decree of the Amerlin seat regarding prosecution of the war with the greater consensus. Shut up, get in line, and rubber stamp this shit.
And Delana barfs.
Yeah, and just the sheer release of tension of knowing what's happening and what this is all building to. I think that's the only reason she pukes, is just the sheer release of tension. It's not about the result. It's just about now I know, and now.
I completely disagree.
Really?
Absolutely. Because I think her instructions are keep things gridlocked. And all of a sudden, 100% of the power, she realizes that with her vote, she made Egwene a dictator. And that ruins everything. That ruins the stasis that she was trying to maintain in the White Tower. So basically, she got all these instructions from Halima. She was so nervous, didn't know if her vote was the right one, and then she realizes, nope, I am fucked. That is not the right vote. She's going to be very angry at me when she finds out what's going on.
Wait, so Delana did vote for this?
Yeah.
Okay,
she kept looking out and then finally stood with her hand pressed to her stomach.
And she only got the lesser consensus. Delana literally... Oh, Delana's so dead.
And it says,
she's so fucking dead. Oh, I didn't realize how dead she was.
Delana pukes, and it says Magla and Soroya and several others still seated looked as though they might follow her example. No others who had been chosen in Saladar, though, because Egwene does not mentally have the idea of understanding which sitters specifically were former sitters from the tower. Like, she doesn't have all of that, like, hammered out in her head, and most readers wouldn't either, but RJ's kind of like, you know, like, hey, if you've read this 50 times and if you're paying enough attention, you know, all of the sitters who got sent by their Aja heads all want to barf now because they're real upset that this happened.
Yeah. But yeah, no, you're right. Gridlock was, even the not dark friends wanted Gridlock because it meant that they could put off the inevitable and they could put off the war. And Egwene has ripped off that warm down comforter of procrastination that they were huddled under and is making them face the frigid dawn of you're going to war.
Yeah.
Oh, they all hate it. They all hate it, except for the young ones who just want to burn it all down because why not? The world's ending.
And then she gives a verbal smackdown to both Lillian and Ramonda, and it's awesome.
Yes, I love that smackdown.
Oh my god.
Yes. A certain degree of respect is required towards the Emerald seat, and from now on, I will have it, daughter. This is no time for me to have to unchair you and name a penance. Lillian's eyes crept wider and wider with the shock. Had the woman really believed everything would continue as before? Or after so long of not daring to show more than the tiniest backbone, had Lillian simply believed she had none?
Daughter.
Yep.
It's just like they're walking all over her. They're like saying, well, that was a piece of shit. We're going to move on. You're so nonsense. Sit the fuck down, daughter. I am 18 years old and I am in charge of this motherfucking ship. It's so good. It's so good.
And that, as she can unchair somebody, she can simply make that declaration, and by law, the Hall now has to support it because she is a dictator of the White Tower now, no longer just the president.
Yeah, though she does say that they would immediately reinstate her to the chair, so it's slightly a hollow threat.
I mean, if she sentenced her to exile or something, that would make it...
Sure.
And then Ramonda smirks, and so she turns and that counts for you double, fucker.
Yeah. Don't think this isn't pointed at all of the romaine. I see this romaine salad.
I will see you in detention.
I am dressing it down with garlic and anchovy.
Nice. Dressing down Romaine. Oh my God.
Yes, this is the dressing down chapter.
Can we please title it that? Oh.
Talks for everyone.
I'm totally titling it that.
And then Takima is kind of very gently you did a great job. This is great. Good idea. Let's all just we can sit here. There's benefits, longer. We can chill. It'll be great. And Egwene's oh, no. And we're just gonna sit here for a month and then we're gonna travel and begin the siege. And this time the silence was broken only by the sound of Takima weeping. And it's just kind of sad and awesome.
And this is the first time we really get the moment where we realize, oh, she's going to travel to the White Tower. And that's what's we have not gotten that information up to this point. We're and for me, the first time reading this, I was oh, there was one of those moments of of course, just travel. Why are they walking? What the hell?
Yeah. And you get a clue of the staying for a month because staying in one place is necessary, but it's not enough. But yeah, this is the big reveal to the audience because that is the one thing that you probably didn't pick up on at this point.
Yeah.
God, it's so good when she's no, we are stopping, we are getting our shit together, and then we are doing the job.
Yeah.
And it's the look at me, I am the captain now kind of thing. This is that moment for her. It's so good. I mean, I'm not calling her a pirate, but There's a little bit of swashbuckling going on.
Yeah. I mean, sailing the high seas, taking down the man. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, Egwene. Why are you the best? Egwene's the best. An end to delays. We're going into Elaine's succession plot. That's where we're going next. We're leaving this excellence and heading over to Elaine next chapter.
Basically, this is again Jordan being an asshole, being no more delays. Anyway, other storyline. And then he's immediately delays this storyline for the rest of the book.
I think it travels at the very end, and then basically you don't even get Egwene in book 9. Book 9 is the book she sits out. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's, yeah.
Yeah.
But we did it. We got through the chapter. Morgan, thank you so much for coming on to this chapter in particular. You brought 100%. So much to that political name salad shenanigans. God, we could not have done that without you. You
was so happy to do it.
Thank you. If I may speak, Mother, Takima said, rising slowly. She attempted a smile, but she still looked decidedly ill. I myself think you have begun well. There may be benefits to stopping here a month, or longer. Ramonda's head jerked around to stare at her, but for once, Takima did not appear to notice. Wintering here, we can avoid worse weather further north, and also plan carefully. There's an end to delays, daughter. Egwene cut in. No more dragging our feet. Would she be another Gera or another Shine? Either was still possible. In 1 month, we will travel from here. No. She was Egwene Alvir, and whatever the secret histories would say of her faults and virtues, the light only knew. But they would be hers, not copies of some other woman's. In 1 month, we will begin the siege of Tarvalon. This time, the silence was broken only by the sound of Takima weeping.
It's like fuel our chapter in with your sadness. Yeah.
So my mom was a singer-songwriter when I was a little kid growing up, and one of her songs, the one she wrote for me when I was a little kid, included the line, "Let me make my own mistakes, at least they will be mine." Every time we get to this part, I'm like, yes, Egwene, yes, you and me, we're gonna make our own goddamn mistakes. They will be our mistakes. We're making our own path through history. Like, it's just, I take so much personal life lessons and advice from Egwene more than many of the characters. Like, she's the role model that I pull as. I admire Min, but Egwene's the one I try to model myself after.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want someone where it's like you refuse to be bullied, yeah, that's like, you try to channel your inner Egwene to not let anybody push you around.
I try to channel my inner Rand. Break it. No,
that's the loose Theron talking. We've talked
my
that's
God.
the one inside Rand. You got to go with the outer Rand.
Inside Rand, there are two wolves.
Do you ever listen to The Wheel Weaves? Because they're in book 6 now, and Dany's favorite character is Luce Theron. So every time Luce Theron goes on a tirade, she's just like, "This is amazing. Where has he been this whole time?"
Oh, that's great. Now, we've had Brett on a few times, but
yeah.
I've never had the brain space to actually listen to their podcast properly.
Oh, their podcast is terrific. Yeah, it's so good.
No, they're really good, yeah. I've listened to more of it than you have, yeah.
I believe it. There's too much content.
Oh, yeah. There's too many podcasts. Yeah.
I haven't been able to get back into Wheel of Time content consumption since the show. Like, I'm still burned out and listening to things from this world.
100%.
Still can't do fiction either. I am just like nonfiction. I need to know what is happening in the real world. Like, it's...
There's only 3 Wheel of Time podcasts I listen to, which is Podcast of the Dragon, Wheel of Time Spoilers, and TVAD. Tarvalon After Dark. And I edit Tarvalon After Dark. So
right, you don't have a choice with TVAD.
Or what spoilers.
So yeah, you don't edit
well, okay,
anymore.
Fair enough. But now I feel like I have to listen to it because I'm not editing it.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, for sure. The one that I feel bad about not getting back to is Wheel Takes. That's the one that I really enjoy, and I will enjoy like the binge when I get back to them. Like, that's the cool thing about this content, right? Is it is evergreen.
Yes.
So I can just fall a year behind, and I'll have a beautiful binge where I won't have to stop for like a week, and it'll be great. But yeah, all the other ones, it's like, well, I should get around to them someday. I mean, Podcast of the Dragon, but like I'm like over a year behind,
That's
so I don't have it on my list of things to feel bad about anymore. It's aged out.
I'm so slow at putting out episodes that it doesn't even matter.
That's one of the reasons why I keep up with it. I get it. I'm like, oh, sweet, another one's out. All right, yeah, like it's been a while.
I put out my last episode and I was like, I want to be conservative. I don't want to promise people anything. So I was like, I'll try to make it like no more than 3 weeks between episodes. Like, that was a fucking joke.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said anything. It's been so long.
I've had that problem with Broken Earth. I have decided I'm no longer apologizing for taking a long time between episodes. I'm done doing that. And I am done predicting, well, I'm back into... No, I'm not. I've never been in a rhythm. I will not promise I'm back in a rhythm. It's ridiculous. No, I feel you so much. The delay on those episodes is soul crushing if you let yourself feel guilty about deadlines.
All right, I had just one or two little things to start with based on from feedback on the last episode. So first of all, Paraval versus Pelaver. Those are different people.
Oh, Paraval and Pelavar.
Which I did not know. I thought they were the same person. So it turns out this guy, Pelavar, who was in the last chapter, is just sort of a generic, you're right, noble who then ends up supporting House Trakand eventually once Aramilla's force is defeated, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Paraville Mantier is actually related to Rand. He's a Mantier. He's related to Tigraine, right?
Mantiar?
Yeah.
Oh.
And he's the one who ends up, he's the 12-year-old boy who ends up supporting Elaine at the end of the series Intercession.
Yeah, he's one of the original High Seats who supports her.
Yep. So I thought those were the same person. I talked about them quite a bit in the last episode like they were the same person. They are not the same person.
Names are hard.
Names are hard.
RJ does not make it any easier
So many
than
names.
it has to be.
Look at all of the names that
Come on.
have to deal with.
Pelavar versus Paraval.
Yeah, no, that is rough. I felt like there was another name there that you were conflagrating, but I wasn't sure. And it's named Salad. And I'm like, we'll get to it when we get to Elaine's arc. So thank you very much to our fans for being Aradia about that.
And Pelavar versus Paraval, it's literally the same letters. The R and the L are just switched. It's literally the same name, just with two letters literally swapped out. It's an anagram of each other. So, yeah.
Terrible for people with dyslexia.
I don't know what you are walking about. And of course, and we call them sort of boring, but they do become important during the Secession War, but they're not really important to Egwene in this moment.
Correct. They are background noise at this point, and when we get to Elaine, suddenly they become relevant parts of the landscape.
All right. That's all I really wanted to follow up on, because I very much got that wrong in the last episode.
Well, we can't get everything right, except for me. I can get everything right.
I'm pretty sure Morgan can get everything right. She's perfect. We already
get everything right.
Yeah, it's true. There's lots of documentation of me getting things very, very wrong.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't matter who's editing. You're going to cut yourself more than the other person. It's just the self-consciousness of editing.
Brian from Way of the Leaf was teasing me because I used to edit my breaths out, so he's like, nobody does that.
No, we do.
Well, no, and see, the thing is, too, I edit breaths out partially because of the equipment that I have in my signal chain. I think it's overly compressed, and I haven't been able to uncompress it, and my stepdad tech is still a month away from being back in the area. So I'm sort of stuck with these really overemphasized breaths. So I often will cut them out, and I cut out some breaths. I leave other breaths.
The same thing with ums. I cut out the easy ums, but occasionally people are like, "Hey, I'm talking about the thing," and the goes right into the word. That's hard to take out. But if it's, "Hey, the dog went to the store," gone.
Yeah. 100%.
It's a thing. There's an art to it, picking how many ums you can get out, and also there's an art to sliding words together so you can make people make very smooth sentences where they didn't. It's honestly, everyone should try audio editing sometime. It's really fun.
It's fun.
It can be fun, yeah.
It also lets you know just how deceptive some of the audio out there is, right? Like how easy it is to just cut stuff from what you say, and what's left is a complete full thought with no interruptions. And you're like, my God, we are so inefficient at talking as people.
So much so. So much so. It's It's wild. And there's all these weird little vocal tics that you do that make so much less sense in the aftermath of a recording than they do in person. Little laughs and gestures that have sounds, and like, it's wild.
Also, a lot of continuation words that let the other person in the conversation know that you're not quite done talking yet, and so they don't start. There's a meta communication that happens in the language that makes sense in person, but in a podcast, it just sounds weird. But in a conversation, the people around you are taking the clues to figure out, like, oh, you're done talking, you're not done talking, it's my turn, that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. So it's a fine art to making the conversation still sound alive, but also making it more efficient for someone who's only getting the audio rather than the complete interactive experience. Or you can just let it go and just let people deal with it, which I know some people do. Definitely there are podcasts out there that just put their shit out there. You can tell because it sounds exactly like a conversation. Yeah, it's just, I could go on forever about this.
Yes. It must be nice to be so unself-conscious. But for those of us who, cringe every time we hear ourselves talk.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. Or who are so anxious about how they sound that they have to do 2 drafts.
That's impressive. Although I looking at your product, part of me is like, I think that's the way to do an individual podcast.
It is. It's the best way to do it and sound intelligent, because you got to fill up all that space by yourself. And so, yeah, the rough draft is a lot of ums and ahs and talking out your ass and, just like running with something. And then, yeah, you go back and you kind of fill in the thoughts and mush it all together and make it sound coherent and smart. So it sure doesn't sound smart the first time.
See, that second step that you've mastered, or at least made a decent, process out of, that's where I fall down on Broken Earth spoilers.
That's the worst.
That's the thing that I haven't been able to get over. And that's why the last couple of recordings and the plan for the future is to have Seth be a silent conversational partner who only I hear and the audience never hears. But he's there to make it not weird, because I couldn't get over that hump through my own creative process. Like, that step is my hang up. I'm so impressed with you.
Yeah, it's so hard. I run my rough draft through a transcription app, which really helped, because then it's like I've got it written out and I have to just go through and kind of clean it up using like the Google Doc. But it's still like listening to the recording and having to go through painstakingly, decide how I'm going to adjust it. I take notes on a sticky pad. I'll listen to the rough draft and everything. But it's like, I heard people say that they hate editing, and I'm like, how can you hate editing? Doing the second set of notes, doing, the rough draft notes, that's fine, except when it's not. This latest episode was horrible, but it's like, but the final draft notes are usually just the worst. That's the part of the process where I'm just like, it makes me want to die a little, because it takes forever. And it's, yeah. But once you get it done, and then you get to do that recording where it sounds really smart, and afterwards you're like, I sound smart because I worked really hard to sound smart. That's good.
Does that mean that you have to do a lot less editing in the final product because you've already got that, like, you've done the rough draft and you're reading from a script?
It's more like an audiobook production almost.
A little bit, yeah. And I'll have to, if I screw up something, if I'm reading a quote from the book or whatever, I'll have to do a few times. So usually what I'll do is I'll listen through when I'm editing the first time, I'll listen through like at 1.65 or something and just go through, cut out anything that's extra. And then I go back through and listen through at regular speed to like, even out the flow of it, cut out, like, trim down like sibilants. I've started getting really good at that, and and getting the gaps out to make it sound like even. So
right, like when you want to take like a couple of breaths to really like recenter, and then like you don't need to take that entire like 30-second break. You can just like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I did that for college, but I don't want to do it for my job.
Right. I mean, we talk about how many passes. You do a rough draft, you transcribe it and do a second draft in writing, then you do a third draft in speech, and then you edit that twice. That you're seeing your content 5 times. We do it twice, maybe. We record it and then we edit it. Yeah.
And making it does not count as listening to it. I am so shocked at the things I say. It's like, what the fuck? Like, it's output and input. They can't happen at the same time. It's just...
Well, like this latest episode was so hard because there are times, especially because I do follow the path of the story. So while I am full spoilers and I'll, talk about things that happen way on, as I'm talking about what's going on right then and be like, this has significance for this far out in the future or whatever, I get kind of like... Sometimes because I'm trying to take a book and go in a fashion where each episode I do is semi, linear or makes sense on how it goes. So I was really stuck about where to go next with this next episode because I was like, I should probably do an episode about Perrin, but, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world of dreams in this episode, and I should probably do an episode about Egwene. But once again, there's stuff about going on in the world of dreams and everything. So if I'm talking about them, so I was finally like, I need to do an episode about the world of dreams. But it took a long time trying to do notes for an episode about Perrin before I realized I've got to do another episode first, which is why it's taken me forever, and I'm still starting to do the final draft notes for this latest episode. So it's like going to be like a month or more between episodes because it's taken me forever to kind of get back in the saddle after the show.
Same.
My process just kind of like, and I like lost all confidence in it. So I really struggled to get the rough draft notes done. And then when I recorded the rough draft, it actually came out a lot better than I thought it would. And I'm like, and so it kind of gave me the confidence because I've had that happen before where I've been kind of like really disappointed in the notes that I had. It didn't seem like there was much. And then once I got going, I ended up with something good. So it's a process.
I want to try a joke. Let's see. Cut this out if it doesn't work.
Okay.
A chicken was in a tree. And there was another chicken at the bottom of it. Now, the first chicken fell out into a pond, passing the chicken on the ground and drowned. When the farmer went up to the chicken and said, "Why didn't you help your friend? He fell out of the tree and drowned." He said, "He didn't give a cluck."
TC Traveler says it's awful. Super Skylight says it's good.
Oh, you stuck the landing right at the end.
I almost lost the thread.
Lost it, and then you fucking stuck the landing.
That made me laugh, though, and if we cut the pauses out with our clever editing, it'll come off smooth as can be.
Oh, no, we're leaving all the pauses in.
But trying to adapt Rand's joke about who to the chickens in the tree. Yeah.
Oh my God, I was ready for that to be so bad. And then you almost totally fumbled it. And
That
then
was actually...
master
Spears
performance.
on bucklers for Seth, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, because I'll have to write it down a better version of it.
No, I can make you a nice edited version.
What did you think about the show? I'm not sure I know your opinion.
I liked it actually quite a lot.
Okay.
I wished that it hadn't caused such a toxic fallout in the fandom because it seemed like there was a lot of melodrama, and it's like I don't like to come across as dismissive of the opinions of people who didn't like it because people's opinions are valid, but the people who didn't like it and bared their breasts about it and were really extra and especially dramatic about it to the point of being mad at people who did like it. I didn't have a lot of patience for that because it was just kind of I think mostly Bree said it best, you cannot argue me out of my joy. So it's just kind of
Yeah, Bree's got good singers.
So today is National Women's Day, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh yeah, congratulations, all women of all varieties.
So there was a post about Harriet on Twitter. Someone was like, "Oh, here's to Harriet,"
All the women have
yeah,
Harriet
exactly.
in her. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sweet. Let me read the comments. I'm sure they'll be nice. And the fourth one is you shit all over Robert Jordan's legacy. How can you, and I'm just like,
that's so shitty.
And that's exactly why I've stepped back from the fandom a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just God, people, please.
She's a wonderful woman.
Yeah.
And the inspiration for Robert Jordan's like writing of the books at all, much less the women in the books.
And the editor. Like,
And the
she has a
fucking
lot
editor.
to do with the books being what they are. Like, okay.
She's been so gracious to stay participating in the community. I sent her a birthday card a couple of years ago. It was like she had like a big birthday. So there was like a call to send postcards. And like, I got a thank you back.
Oh, that's
like,
cool.
I got a like little note. Like, she clearly sat down and signed 1 billion fucking cards to say thank you for all the birthday cards. She's wonderful. Like,
That's like old-fashioned manners.
Don't be a shithead. Well, she's an old lady from the
Like, holy
South. I
shit.
mean,
People's just
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, I'm hoping that a lot of the people who came to the books from watching the show will do at least a little bit of healing in the community, because there are a whole bunch of people who are reading the books now and loving them because they loved the show.
And they're starting to finish. We've
Yeah.
now had enough time since the show either came out or finished that the faster readers are getting through all of the Wheel of Time content. And I'm seeing them start to engage out there on the internet.
yeah, seeing them go along with their spoilers deeper and deeper into the reads, like, oh, like I remember that account from last week. You're 2 books farther along. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And just a lot of people are like, I'm hitting book 7. I'm hitting book 6. I'm hitting book 9 for the first time. Yeah.
That's been a really fun part. Like, I haven't been on Twitter much before, but I've been more on Twitter lately because I really need to not be on Facebook. And it's been really fun. That's a kind of content that I haven't seen on Twitter before. It's just this frequent stream of people being like, what the fuck is this box bullshit? I can't believe Alana did that. What the hell is Alana thinking? Like, there's just these raw, it's why the first time podcasts are so great, but it's just what my Twitter feed is full of. It's wonderful. Because I only use Twitter for Wheel of Time, basically. So
To that. And you know, I'll say the longer I've gotten away from the show, the less I like it.
Yeah.
You know, I had an initial positive opinion, and it's, you know, but at the same, so it's funny to me to be like, yeah, I didn't really like this show that much, but at the same time, like, I really hate the people who didn't like it. You know, so so I want to be out there and being positive about the show, and like, I think it's got potential.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think it was perfect, but
I was more disappointed than not liking it, you know? It's like they gave me a taste of what I wanted instead of the whole meal.
yeah, and I think that I totally respect people who don't like it in that regard, or like it wasn't what they envisioned, like in an organic way. But like you said, Morgan, it's the people that like need you to agree with them that sucks. Like, I mean, I'm happy to argue with Seth about like why things are cool or not, and like I have my like. Yes, there's a lot of potential that I don't think has been actualized, but I believe that it's all coming from a place where it's possible. Like, it's not like they trashed on it in the way that I would have found irredeemable, right? They did the things that make it like, all right, I'm here for season 2. Come on.
I feel like the people who are just like so mortally offended by it to the point where they presume to be mortally offended by other people's opinions, where like, how dare they like something like that? It's like, well, first of all, calm your tits and chill your melodrama. And, you know, secondly, it's sort of like they operate in this world where they're like, you know, oh, well, these books are utterly flawless. It's like, no, they're not.
Yeah,
you know, one of the reasons why I like reading them so much, and, you know, why they offer so much to like break down, is because they're not perfect. You know, because he wasn't a flawless writer, because he had strengths and weaknesses, you know, it's like, so that's what makes it fun. And, you know, I like the fact that, you know, the show is going to do things that are better than he did, and I like that because that gives it potential. And so I'm sort of like fine with the fact that some of the stuff that the show does isn't going to be as good. I don't expect it to be as good for some things. I want to see relationships that don't make me want to cringe. I want to see, you know, just, yeah, there's just a lot of things where, and I'm just, I don't know, I'm learning a lot more about like the film and screenwriting and things like that to get an understanding of how things transfer in different mediums, and kind of an appreciation of how you might go about doing that kind of stuff.
I gotta say, something I've been struggle with the last few chapters is how often I want to quote the show when looking at Swan and Egwene's relationship.
Yeah.
They really did get the heart and soul of these characters, because I'm like, oh, that's why that line makes sense. There's so many times I want to just use the show. And then I'm like, no, I want to talk about the books. I don't want to talk about the show. But it has been a struggle because the characters of Swan and Egwene in the show clearly reflect this part of Rafe's understanding of their arcs.
I could tell that, especially in today when you're like talking about Suan's relationship with Brynn. Where I was like, you were like, but no, she has a canonical relationship with Moiraine. I was like, she really doesn't.
Well, no, that's not because of the show.
Okay.
That one is, that is me in New Spring. That the show just tacked on what I accept from New Spring. No, I'm talking about lines like Swan, no love but the seat.
Yeah.
Right? When you're talking about how Swan didn't have a relationship and she doesn't have experience because she dedicated herself to the seat. And I'm like, that's why she gave that little mini monologue about like no life but the seat when she's looking all sorrowfully at Moiraine, you know, like that's more like what I meant.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I feel like the only thing that they changed as far as her relationship with Moiraine was they didn't break up, which is a very small change. I feel like what happened with Perrin and Egwene in the White Cloak camp was but was more changes there than what changed with their relationship, which is one of the things that made me so annoyed with so many people who were like upset about it. I'm like, why are you upset? This is a far more interesting and compelling relationship than the relationships that they go on to have in the story. And it's like her relationship with Gareth Bryne is honestly one of the better relationships in the books, I think. You know, it's like, or at least I don't hate it the way I hate a lot of them. I don't know. It's just, I think it's a little bit cute. It's cringy, but it's cute in a way that some of them are just cringy.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?